What work moment made your attitude go from proud employee to I'm just here for the paycheck? One day on my way to work I got into a car accident. Car totaled. Grandpa we wasn't sure was going to make it. Me possible concussion. I called into my job to explain why I can't come in. Their response was unless bones are broken no excuses, get to work. From that day forward my job was just a check to me. I used to come in early and stay late with no thank you out and them trying to short my paycheck. From then on no more. Boss at department store wanted me to pressure people into buying crap they didn't need. Old fella came through, needed help with his disconnecting internet. I know my networks. Identified from his information that the fault was the Ethernet cable between his gateway and wireless AP. Sold him a cheap cable. Boss tells me I should have tried to sell him a new router too. Guy was a freaking pensioner. You slimy C. I quit a few days later. Frick that crap. I refuse to lie to sell crap. My store had been struggling to meet its targets for a while. So we buckled down and did our best and we exceeded our weekly target. No other store in our district managed this. On our weekly conference call, my district manager asked us why we didn't do any better and implied we were lazy. I phoned her after the conference call and essentially told her to never accuse me or my staff of being lazy ever again or we would make sure that this store never meets its targets ever again. From that point on, I stopped caring about my job. I stopped trying to meet targets, to implement mandatory changes on time, respond to emails in an acceptable time frame, discipline my employees. I took longer lunch breaks than was acceptable and encouraged my staff to do the same. At some point my district manager asked me why we didn't do a certain thing that was apparently critically important and I replied, "It's clear that nothing we do will ever be good enough for you. So we stopped trying to please you. We're focused on pleasing our customers and not hating every day that we come into work." A few months later I resigned, taking a position with another company that was, strangely, made up of a lot of employees from the company I had just left. We were all able to commiserate. The store I left had a complete staff turnover shortly after. Everyone was let go and replaced. Then they did a complete turnover a year after that and, just the other day, I was in the shopping mall and I saw the store was closed permanently. When my first job at a grocery store made me literally pick up human feces because someone crap on the floor of the bathroom. Went from psych to have a job to I hate everything about this real quick. I caught our manager stealing from the company 3 different times. The owner of the business is his best friend from high school. After the 3rd time when the owner kept him on for humanitarian reasons, I thought frick it, I turn up and do my job, that's all. Back in the early 90s I was a radio announcer at a small AM station in suburban Minneapolis. I had been working weekends there for $5 an hour. Yes, you read that right. And when they made me full-time they just multiplied $5 times 40 hours per week. After I had been working there for a while I found out the weekend announcers had gotten a raise to $5.25. And I was still making $5. I made a stink and they gave me a raise. A few months later I found out that the new receptionist they hired was also being paid more than me. I raised a stink again and got another raise. In 3 years there, those were the only raises I got. I knew the only way to improve my situation was to leave. I continued to show up, but I was no longer working for them. I was working to improve my skills and make a killer demo tape so I could leave. When I quit a few months later, the manager tried to throw it in my face as if he had gone to the mat for me and gotten me those raises. This sorta happened to me. I started off at 11 per hour, and I later found out their minimum was actually 12 per hour. I respectfully went to the general manager and 1 month later I'm still at the same rate. I've been there for 4 months and I just work there now to get a free membership for the most expensive gym in my town. I work part-time at a restaurant to pay for college. I had told my boss that I had worked there a year and thought it was time to start thinking about advancement. These talks have been hinted at for a few months now. Just the other day he hired someone that I have to train so they can have the job I've been hunting for. His reasoning was that these people are trying to make a life out of this job, but for me he thinks I'm going to just move on after I graduate. That was eye-opening for me. So instead of putting in extra hours and even popping in between classes to see if they need help, now it's more like I'm only going to show up on the days I'm scheduled, and outside of those hours that place doesn't exist. Nothing like when your boss makes their own self-fulfilling prophecies. Well, I wasn't really thinking about leaving this place after graduation, but now. Respond to work emails regardless of the time of day or day of the week. Work extra hours at least 3/5 days a week to meet my boss's ridiculous demands and do a frick ton of work that isn't in my job description. Boss told me at a quarterly review that I wasn't committed enough to the business. It was genuinely like a switch. One of my co-workers, Peggy, unexpectedly died, which was sad and awful. On top of that, it took 5 months to fill the position, and in the interim, my boss asked me to take on all of Peggy's workload by myself, since I am the only person in the department with that skill set. So I worked my butt off. Then I applied for the open position, a step above mine, and was turned down. Then I had to train the new hire on how to do the job. I come in on time or early every day, stay till the end of my shift or later if need be, pick up the pace when it's busy. Then I started to notice that everyone else shows up 10+ minutes late consistently and no one questions it. They usually leave 5-10 minutes early and keep at one slow pace all day long. There's also nowhere to move up in the company. Everyone gets the same pay raise every year, and no good deed gets acknowledged. Everyone gets the same pay raise every year. Lucky. When I was up for a shift leader, retail manager position, I had the best performance score in the store, previous management experience, had the support of the assistant manager, and I even had one of the other applicants drop out when they heard I was up for the spot. The store manager hired from outside the company to fill the spot. Sounds like you were making someone insecure. I used to work as a recruiter for a for-profit school. There were thousands of us with the title of Assistant Director of Admissions. We were basically glorified telemarketers. I took the job because the pay was decent and I truly believe that everyone should get an education who wants one. I myself was a non-traditional student, so I know about going back to school later for a degree. My first clue should have been the interview. The director asked why I wanted to work there, and when I said stuff like helping others get an education, he looked at me and said, "I work here so I can drive that Benz in the parking lot." Over the period of several months, I had a lot more disillusioning moments. Things like my director outright telling us that we weren't looking to recruit the cream of the crop students, reading the fine print in our placement rates that we pushed, which said that if you got a job after graduating then we counted you, regardless of whether it was in your field. So, congrats to all those game design grads working at McDonald's. Finding out that we really only cared if you made it past the 2 week, 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 the 2 week. What finally did it for me was the day my boss pressured me into getting this guy to sign up for our graphic design degree. This was a man, wife or wife and kids who just wanted to provide better for them. Despite this guy being so computer illiterate that he needed his son to help him fill out the online application. We told him that our 5-1-2 computer fundamentals course would get him up to speed on not just using computers but also make him functionally literate in Photoshop and Illustrator. I suppose if you were a genius, this might be true, but if you were talking to me, that was unlikely to be the case. I let my boss push the sale recruitment because this guy seemed excited and I hoped he'd somehow pull it off. It was almost too easy. Sure as crap. 2 weeks later, his wife called me crying saying he was trying so hard but just kept falling behind and that he had to drop out, after he'd of course dropped hundreds on the Adobe Creative Suite, books, tuition, etc. From that point on, I didn't recruit another student. I stopped trying, became an insubordinate butthole, started dumbass fights with management, like over wanting to know why women got to wear skirts to work but I couldn't wear a kilt, and basically goofed off all day until I finally decided to quit. to this day I feel bad about anyone I recruited and take great delight in the backlash we see now against for-profit colleges. If there is a heck and I go there, this will be a big reason why. I taught at that school, or one very like it. Did not feel good about trying to educate students who were not college material. A few did okay, but many couldn't hack it. One of the most corrupt businesses there is. For-profit colleges. Just taking advantage of the poor, illiterate, and desperate. The moment when the manager at the bank I worked at made me apologize for upsetting a customer who screamed at me, threw rolls of quarters at my face, and called me a freaking idiot bitch cunt. I'd like to think I wouldn't have apologized. I'd like to think I would have filed assault charges and sued for emotional damages, but I'd probably have done the same. When the regional manager decided that, in addition to giving me some great tips to help improve my salesmanship, he would insult my personality behind my back to my manager. If you're not willing to accept that people with different personality types exist and are fully capable of connecting with customers, then I'm not going to bother putting in 100% effort. Put in my 2 weeks a week ago and have been guilt-tripped several times by my manager. Good riddance. Crappy managers ruin everything. Found out my friend that got hired after me was getting paid 12 per hour, and I was getting paid 11 per hour. I was just thinking it was just based on work experience, but then she said no dude, the manager told me minimum was 12. I really enjoyed working electronics at Target. I got to play with the tech gadgets, worked with some cool folk, and overall the guest interaction was very nice. Oh, and I rarely had to worry about zoning or a shop. Our store had one dedicated person at the boat, me, and had different employees to zone reshop electronics. Our store got a renovation right before I was hired, so we had all the gaming systems hooked up with demos and almost all the gadgets were on display to play with. I was encouraged to demo the products with guests, meaning play them in Guitar Hero, demonstrate the cameras, etc. It was great and I was making $10 HR. Then they stopped respecting my school hours by refusing me time off during my exams. Despite me being approved for that time 6 months in advance when I was hired, I immediately planned when my last day would be, and the job stopped being fun at that point. It was a shame, because the day before I realized I had to quit I ordered a bright red blazer to wear to work for fun. Good thing I root for teams with red as their color. When I was a cashier at Borders we had to keep a certain percentage of Borders rewards transactions. I was good at my job and was able to get in the high 80s by being a good salesman and convincing them to get it. There was another guy I worked with who kept his percentage up by cheating. He would just swipe a card and put it into people's bags without saying anything about it. Eventually he got caught and almost fired, but this settles on putting him on probation and having a manager watch his transactions closely. Fast forward about a month and I find out he's getting promoted to work on the floor with all the movies and music. I could not believe they promoted him after all that crap and looked me over. Someone that was a hard worker that did a really good job and often would have people compliment me to my managers. After that, I stopped caring as much. Still kept my numbers up, but not as high as I used to. Ended up getting fired from there a couple months later because the guy that was covering my shift while I was on vacation was fired. So I had too many unexcused absences. I'm glad that company tanked. You were valuable in your position so they didn't want to promote you out of it. They weren't going to rely on that other guy to get high 80s. It really sucks, but that's the way it works sometimes. When I wrote a detailed report and outlined how we could reallocate current assets for greater efficiency and profits and was accused of being disloyal and told to be thankful that I had a job anyway, I quit the next day and landed a better job with better pay and benefits the next week. You earned the largest raise I can give you, $0.10 an hour, and had one of the best reviews on staff. But since you're leaving in 5 months, we aren't going to process the raise since it won't go through for about 6 weeks. When you're making $8 an hour, a $0.10 raise isn't much but it's something. Also found out they were about to give one of my trainees a $0.50 hour raise, which would put her rate above mine. I felt so much schadenfreude when she got fired. Nearly died from going overboard on a small boat while letting the lines go in stormy conditions. Complained to the safety rep who said an investigation into the matter would be held. That never happened. Welp, I work as an assistant manager in retail. This week the second assistant had a kid and the store manager went to a different city for a store setup. This caused me, an 18-year-old high school student, to work 57 hours in 9 days, as well as dealing with school and college work. That work week wasn't bad and I didn't complain about that. But the last day of the marathon was a Jordan shoe release day. There were 3 people scheduled to work. 1 for the door, 1 for the register and 1 for the shoes. One of my employees got hurt, which brought us down to 2 people. The crowd of nearly 70 people took a hold of this opportunity and stormed the store when a kid opened the door trying to sell his sick butt J's. This resulted in a massive fight, hundreds of dollars of stolen merchandise, and the cops being called. It was a fun week. I worked for a company that traveled around installing video cameras and other electronics into police cars or company vehicles. I used my personal vehicle and within a couple of months had put about 25,000 miles on it. We also worked up to 12-hour shifts in the cold and rain until our work was completed. We also stayed on the road at least 20 days each month. I didn't mind because the owner was cool and the pay was good. One morning after picking up my helper, I stopped at a gas station to fuel up for a trip to Kansas. The company credit card was declined and I called my boss to ask him what was going on. He gets mad at me because I hadn't figured out that the card wasn't any good sooner and BF'd me for about 10 minutes saying that he could have gotten cash to me if I had told him sooner. After that I began job hunting and did the bare minimum to not get fired. I hadn't figured out that the card wasn't any good. I'm sure the card was fine. It just doesn't work when the boss doesn't pay the bill. Good call starting the job hunt. I work at a gym that hosts child's birthday parties, which should be enough for a I'm just here for the paycheck attitude on its own. The moment that made me hate that job with every fiber of my being was the day a kid threw up in the bounce house after eating 3 blue frosted cupcakes. Children continued to play in it and tracked the vomit everywhere. After the party left, early, might I add, due to blow puke damage, my manager went into the bounce house to try to clean it. Well, she threw up on top of the blue throw up. I was the only other employee there that day, so guess who got to clean all that? Me. I make minimum wage. Frick this job. That sucks, but props to the manager trying to do it herself first. I do bathroom remodels. About a year or so ago the company decided to change its strategy of paying their installers. We make commission on remodels and hourly for service calls, but they'll switch the two whenever it saves them money. They will not pay installers on what is considered paid time when we go back to a recent remodel we've done to do a service. They stopped paying drive time for jobs hours away that require overnight stays. They will not pay us for mandatory meetings in the mornings. Bear in mind that we're required to do remodels as quickly as possible, 1 day for most wet areas, and any time we're not spending on the job is increasing how long we're working that day. We work an average of 60 hours per week, but they recently reduced the pay of some of the newer installers, mine included. They started making us take on the workload of previously subbed out work that should be subbed out, like electrical, but did not increase pay. The production manager, the guy that visits the customer before everything is ordered, tends to make a lot of mistakes, so very few jobs go smoothly or as planned. This usually results in an upset customer, but the management insists that the installers caused the problems. Crap sucks. I was a music promoter. Seriously, it was great. Get paid to go to San Fran every weekend. Hit the clubs and pass out flyers because everyone knows me. Frickin' A. It rocked. I was pushed shows for the Chemical Brothers, Black Eyed Peas. Crap, we had won at motherfricking 3Com Park. Then one day, I asked for my paycheck. Boss was embezzling, owed me for a month. I told him I wasn't working another minute until I got paid since I knew he had the money. He fired me. We went to the labor commission. I won. Frick that guy. Every time I didn't think a dog was socialized enough to be in daycare and then was told to pass the dog anyway, it puts me in danger and it puts the rest of the dogs in danger. I'm glad I don't work there anymore, even though I miss the cool discounts and being able to take my dog to work. I was a firefighter hired on at 22. I had the greenest view of the world. I just want to help people with the response when asked by the senior guys, who always laughed at that. Fast forward about 2 years. 2 years of being covered in other people's pee, crap, blood, brains, puke, etc. I stopped keeping track of the dead bodies around 30. I still just wanted to make a difference. And then I respond to a DOA 4-month-old. It kinda fricks with you a little when it all snaps into perspective that more often than not, it's not the movie-esque scene of saving the day. It's more body bags, and drug addicts, and constant crap that even if you made a difference for even a single minute, it doesn't change anything about their life because it's either just routine, or the very end of it. I stayed on another miserable year because the money was better than what I'd be able to get initially, and I used the time to build my small business up and running. I wish they put a significantly shorter time requirement for pensions. I believe a person can only see and experience so many stressful things in a lifetime before it seriously affects their state of mind, usually subconsciously. My threshold was much lower apparently. I couldn't turn off. I'd carry them with me. I'd imagine how their families felt, how it might affect the ones I spoke with. Not a good habit to get into. It ultimately led to what I'd consider a drinking problem, which I've since addressed. For all the firefighters and police out there, remember to always put yourself first and freaking talk to someone if you're coping with something you witnessed on the job. Frick that bottling up mentality, it never ends well. When the customer started begging for a discount on an item that did not qualify and after I told them no, asked for my manager, who gave it to them because they were cool with each other. It was the first of many times someone whined or bullied their way into getting a discount because they were friendly with the manager. At another job, a big pet supply chain, it was when everyone kept making me clean out the bins where people put their dogs' leavings if they went in the store. Gloves were not provided. It smelled so freaking bad and people missed the plastic bag more than they should have. Call OSHA about the no gloves crap. I was a key holder at Gap and loved my job. They promoted me to a smaller store to learn from the best store director to prepare to be a store director. 2 days after being there, we were being pressured by our regional manager to get some more Gap cards. She went to the back, grabbed some old employee applications, and ran Gap card applications with those old employee applicants' social security numbers. I notified HR, and was told that I must have seen something wrong. I applied to work at J. Crew and left 4 weeks later for much higher pay and happiness. 2 years later I was the hiring manager at J. Crew, and lo and behold her application was on my desk. I marked her application as unfit for position and filed it away. In a single day, I saw a lift parked with the forks up and facing a high traffic area, a half-full pallet of water blocking the emergency exit, and a bottle of wine smashed on the floor with a wet floor sign that no one could be asked to clean up. I made assistant meat market manager. The extra responsibility wasn't so bad, but the perishable manager would always ride the meat department about stupid crap since she didn't know anything about it. I once was told not to order any turkeys for Thanksgiving since we had some coming in the next day. When we didn't get the extra shipment everyone freaked out, but we pulled through it like we always did. 2 months later she wrote me up for not ordering turkeys. Stuff like that really made me stop caring. I think my story is like most others. I really took a lot of pride in going the extra mile, really going out of my way to make my customers and co-workers successful, and doing solid engineering work based on sound principles. But then I realized that my bosses benefited from that approach far more than I ever would, and all they would ever do is just keep asking for more. My loyalty to them would never be matched in return. And it never will be for you, either. I'm older than most of you. I've been on this carousel for a long time. If there's any advice I would give to you, it's this. Stop waiting on your career to fulfill you. It never will. Your career is controlled by forces much more powerful than you, and they don't care about you, no matter how much they insist otherwise. Instead, look to find personal fulfillment in your non-working life. Adjust your priorities so that you don't kill yourself for work. It's not worth it. If you have to really put yourself out there, do it for your friends, your family, your beliefs, not for your job. This is meant especially for those of you who have begun to raise families of your own. The time you lose with your kids when they are young, with your spouse in a new marriage, because you wanted to be at work, you never get that time back. But it is absolutely not worth the trade. Your alienated kids have no desire to show up at your retirement party and throw a bucket of Gatorade over your head to celebrate all the times you ignored them. Work is just a means to an end. Let it go. There is absolutely no shame in making other things priority over your career. You will never, ever regret choosing your family first. I was told that I would be a perfect fit for a position. Then they gave me a lame excuse about filling it with another person. That person later brought our network down a few times, screwed up stuff, and wasn't available when crap went down. I have no idea why he's still there. It's sad that he comes to me for help on crap sometimes. Whatever. Don't help him anymore. Children's ski instructor at a resort that everyone non-skiers included knows. During a discussion about events that had occurred that day when I was explaining the reason behind why I did something and the way I did it, it was the most beneficial for my students in multiple ways. My supervisor looked straight at me and said, "It's not about the kids. 5 years service before. 2 weeks after." Whistler. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.